Hello, everybody. Welcome back to a bonus session because I can't fit this in the main session. We're going to be reading a book. 3-9.
Wow, just
It's
10 chapters. But
kind
they're
of
all pretty long.
gargantuan. I hope this is a good read.
I like it. I
Alrighty.
think maybe some of the later chapters, like chapters 7, 8, you can kind of like skim through because the final fight is a little long.
I see. Alrighty. Let's get started.
hmm
Chapter 1: The Butler and the Lady. A single passenger ship of prodigious size lay anchored to a port town in the northeast of the Principality of Remiferia. Extravagantly crafted from top to bottom. A single glance was enough to discern its intended clientele. The privileged few among the society's upper crust. True to appearances. True to appearances, the passengers boarding the vessel that day most certainly fit the bill, each smartly dressed and adorned with conspicuous opulence. Let me just open my soda real quick.
I got water.
Even among such guests, two stood out in particular. However, a young lady possessed of regal air, and the butler at her side. Judging from their attire, behavior, and linguistic register, they suited the setting to a prim and proper T. The single factor that set them apart from other guests were their ages. Neither looked to be much older than 12, perhaps 13 years old, making them mere children in the eyes of most. Just one moment, milady. The young butler labored to keep pace with the young lady as he dragged the large suitcase behind them. Despite this, he continued to stride forward, not slowing her pace in the slightest. Exhaustion creased his weary brow. His attire was proper, as befitting his station, but his unkempt hair, grown out long enough to completely obscure his eyes, was another story. On top of that, everything about his demeanor screamed that he was timid and weak of spirit. "Snap to it, you dullard!" the young lady brusquely shouted, now several paces ahead of the struggling boy. "If you can't make those legs work any faster, I'll cut them off and feed them to the hounds." Holy shit. What the hell? She continued to increase her pace while assailing her butler with an unending string of contemptuous words. Her arrogant, haughty demeanor stood in stark contrast to her graceful appearance, dressed in a lovely black frilled dress. I'm doing good, don't worry. Her eyes shone like a pair of sparkling sapphires, and her twin tails curled slightly in perfect arcs. It doesn't say what color her hair is it?
Yeah, her blue eyes show like a pair of
Oh yeah,
sparkles.
blue eyes. Yeah, but what about the hair color? We'll probably get to that. Most eye-catching of all, however, was the 50-yard stuffed bear she held close to her chest. Though it was large enough to draw attention, it didn't look out of place in the arms of a girl such as her. "Ah, please, my lady, forgive me," in response to the girl's tirade. The boy miserably sputtered excuses and breathlessly plead for leniency as he summoned his remaining strength to pick up his pace. After a not insubstantial trip, the two finally arrived at the ship's boarding gate. "May I please see your invitation and boarding passes?" The crew member working at the gate asked, smiling politely. Up close, the ship was more opulent. A prized possession of the Byrne Company, its main route was between Remiferia and the Calvary Republic, via Lumlin Bay? Interesting. For this particular trip, the entire ship had been reserved by one Haldor Barn, a wealthy merchant from Calvard. Passengers hoping to board required both a standard boarding pass as well as an explicit invitation from Mr. Barn himself. However, as each invitation included the room information for the guest in question, the boarding pass was strictly a formality. Gray, the girl called the boy by name and gestured her hand, implicitly ordering him to present their credentials. "Yes, my lady. What do you require of me?" the boy asked, having completely failed to grasp his employer's unspoken instructions. "You cannot possibly be this dense, you stupid worm," she snapped. "Oh, I'm so sorry, my lady. I beg you for forgiveness." Cowering before the young lady's vicious glare, the boy stuttered and stammered 1,000 apologies. Silence, the invitation boarding pass, now. Right away, milady. The boy began busily rustling through the contents of the suitcase, frantically searching for requisite papers. Yet his haste quickly proved to be his downfall, for no sooner had he located the pass than a sudden gust of wind blew past, tearing the paper from his hand. "Oh no!" he exclaimed. The boy instinctively threw his arms out, stretching them to his physical limit, but his efforts were in vain. The boarding pass gently fluttered down to the bottom of the harbor, coming to rest gently on the water surface. Oh boy.
Uh-oh.
As though that wasn't bad enough, misfortune continued to hound the boy as a number of silhouettes swiftly appeared beneath the waterlogged document. A school of fish jumped into the air with a splash, spraying water all about. They then descended back into the harbor's depths, taking the hapless butler's boarding pass along with them. Ah, no! The boy's grief-stricken cry resonated throughout the harbor. Trembling with fear, he turned and faced his master, prepared for an eruption of anger followed with a vicious tirade of abuse. Yet it did not immediately come. The girl simply stood there in silence. She stared long and hard at the boy, her face betraying no expression whatsoever. After what felt like an eternity, she spoke. This was the calm before the storm. The boy began spitting out apologies, tripping over his words as his voice grew weaker by the second, like a short-circuited radio, warbling its death knell. His body seemed to shrink as his shoulders slumped like a criminal awaiting judgment. "You're absolutely useless." The girl's anger... Oh, man. The girl's anger finally burst forth in one violent blast. Just desperate to keep... Despite the ferocity in her explanation, she managed to save enough breath to launch a sharp kick at the boy in the same moment. The well-aimed strike sent the boy flying further than her petite frame would suggest was possible. He seemed to hang in the air for a brief moment before resuming his journey downward off the edge of the pier, reaching the frigid edge as he broke through the water surface with a splash.
Well, poor guy.
Brother did not deserve that. As soon as he returned to his senses, he began violently thrashing his arms about, pleading for aid, between coughing up mouthfuls of cold water. "My lady, please help me," he begged, his thrashing growing more desperate and frantic. "You're going to find that pass, and I mean now. You're not leaving that water until I see it in your hands." "But I can't swim." He blurbed as his head began to slowly sink beneath the surface. "I am well aware. Wow, what a bitch!" "Please, His words were cut short as his lungs filled with water and the rest of his head bobbed below the surface. His thrashing ceased as his silhouette grew faint as he quickly plummeted downward to the bottom of the bay. Wow! What? With this...
M for murder.
Oh my god. With the situation having reached an unacceptable level of risk, several onlooking crew members ran to rescue the waterlogged butler. And the moment the boy made it out of the bay, however, the still enraged girl tried to kick him right back in again.
Oh no.
"Miss, please, you must calm down," the crew member at the gate said, trying to pass by the young noble. How am I calm about this? My father was unable to attend, so I'm here in his place. There are important business discussions taking place on the ship that I cannot afford to miss, and now thanks to this someone's rank and competence, that is exactly what's going to happen. The girl gave the boy a menacing glare so virulent it could have stripped the paint from the entire vessel. "Tell me, Worm, how exactly you're going to take responsibility for me being unable to board?" Though the boy was still coughing violently, spewing water, his already pallid face managed to lose what little color remained of it upon hearing those words. Feeling pity for the boy, the gate attendant stepped in. "Well, for the time being, may I see your invitation instead?" The boy moved to comply with her request, but was stopped in his tracks by the girl's menacing scowl. She produced the invitation herself, and roughly shoved it at the attendant. The attendant read over the paper, then went through the names on the guest list. "This is an invitation for Baron Chris Reinhardt." "Oh, hi, Chris. How you doing?"
Hi.
who I can confirm is indeed on the guest list. Might I presume you two are his daughter and her attendant? Oh, here comes a sneeze.
There you go.
Yeah, I was just waiting. You presume correctly. I am Baron Reinhardt's eldest daughter, Celia Reinhardt. It's not a name I recognize.
Magic is everything.
Magic is everything. The gate attendant made a respectful bow before continuing to speak. Then there will be no need to further concern yourself with the matter of the boarding pass, Miss Reinhardt. You may proceed. Oh, we may? Strictly speaking, a decision of this nature required approval from a high-ranking employee. But in this case, the gate attendants decided that swift action was for the best. The best way to provide a peaceful solution to the rapidly worsening situation at hand. It seems as though you'll live to ride another day, you useless worm. Count yourself lucky. The girl boarded the ship, still staring icy daggers at her butler. He dragged their luggage on after her, still wheezing and dripping wet from the events the past few minutes. He effusively, okay, expressed his gratitude to the gate attendant as he passed, receiving a sympathetic smile and a few words of encouragement. Sorry, just checking something. Having finally boarded the ship, the two youths immediately headed for the room. Their pace was quick, as though they already knew the way, and not a single word was exchanged between them as they briskly walked down the halls. Once they arrived, they gave the room a quick yet thorough search. Infiltration complete. The girl broke their silence, suddenly speaking in a sleepy drawl. Her eyelids drooped as she let out a mighty yawn, not a trace remaining of the tense, high-handed young lady from a few moments ago. I'm beat, S. Think I'm gonna take a nap. She tossed her plush bear into the bed and immediately launched herself after it. She dove under the covers with a childlike exuberance befitting someone her age, perhaps someone even younger. In contrast to her whimsical new demeanor, the boy remained completely expressionless. Don't let your guard down, the real mission begins now. His voice was alarmingly calm and terse as he brushed aside his bangs, still wet from the frigid water of the harbor. His now visible eyes were cold and sharp. Beneath that, however, was the gleam of a hunter fixed on its prey. Each and every ridge of his body exuded composure. The flustered, stammering butler from before was nothing but a memory. Though the girl's transformation was strange, the boy's sudden shift in personality was nothing short of jarring. That really wasn't your best work out there, S. Far from it. She spoke nonchalantly, rolling around the bed as she critiqued the boy's performance. He remained silent for a moment before speaking, almost as though he agreed with her assessment, at least in part. It didn't affect the mission. But you overdid each and every reaction. It's not easy to match without seeming unnatural, you know? You hamming it up like that made us stand out more than we need to. Despite her words, the girl's half-hearted tone took a bite of her criticisms. These were the duo's true personalities. The upper-class young lady and a bumbling butler making a spectacle at the boarding gate were simply an elaborate pageantry. An act necessary for gaining entry to the ship and nothing more. Any other method of infiltration might have raised suspicion and danger in the mission, thus they chose to board under false identities. They had made clever use of the organization's info network beforehand, ascertaining which of the invitees would be unable to attend. Armed with this bit of intel, they created their personas. Their invitations required for boarding were printed on high-quality paper, but ultimately deferred only in name. Using the same layout for each invitation was a logical choice for a merchant looking to pinch Mira wherever possible. Logical or not, that particular decision was made the necessary forgery, a walk in the park. The boarding pass, on the other hand, was a different story. The Verne Company was known to employ cutting-edge technology to prevent forgeries. Attempting to use a fake pass to board was an act accompanied by a considerable amount of risk. This is why the two engineered the dramatic performance that took place at the boarding gate. The boy dropped their boarding pass was, of course, an intentional act, Both the gust of wind and timely group of fish were the result of a battle orbit the girl had kept hidden under a stuffed bear. A clever method she used many times in the past to cast arts unnoticed. All of their hard work had paid off. The infiltration had gone exactly as planned. It was yet another successful operation for the boy, known as Three of Swords, and the girl, known as Nine of Swords, and their life as professional assassins. To be continued.
Ooh,
Hmm.
what a twist.
What a twist. They were, it wasn't a rich girl and a butler, it was a pair of assassins. One of them was named S.
Yes.
Okay.
Probably for swords?
Yeah. How old are they? I think they're like 12, they said?
Well, they were both of swords. Three of swords and nine of swords.
I see.
Do you want me to... Do you want to, like, take... You take chapter 1, I'll take chapter 2, you take chapter...
Yeah, we could alternate, yeah. That's fine.
Chapter 2, 3, and 9. At its scheduled time, the ship departed. As he watched the shoreline shrink into the distance, Three of Swords spoke in a cold, flat voice. Target presence confirmed. Have we pinpointed enemy positioning? Is our route prepared? Yep, we're good to go. The young girl known as Nine of Swords stood behind the boy, answering in a relaxed drawl, the polar opposite of her partner's icy tone. Having been dispatched by the organization, the two laid the groundwork for their mission, the assassination of the man responsible for this voyage, the wealthy merchant Haldor Barr. The organization was not particular about how they dealt with their targets, whether in swift silence or via raucous violence. Their only real concern was making sure they did not draw attention of the Bracer Guild or the local police. As a hard rule, 3 and 9 would always select the most efficient method available to them. In this case, their mission was to prevent the ship from arriving in Calvard with Haldor still alive on it. Haldor had strong ties with Heiwe, a sizable criminal organization in the Republic. Should he safely make it to his destination and take refuge under their protection, his extraction and subsequent elimination would prove an exceptionally difficult task. Aside from the engine area, the ship had 3 main floors. The lowest housed a considerable number of general passengers. Naturally, this was where 3 and 9's room was located. The second floor contained a hall used for parties, banquets, and meals, as well as other such events. Finally, the third floor featured luxury rooms prepared specifically for noble use. At present, however, the entirety of the floor was reserved by Haldor, who was enjoying the comforts of the room in the furthest back. 3 and 9 put their equipment and tools in order and then sprang into action. Their plan was to head to the hall on the second floor, but not before leaving a little gift on the first. The hall would be packed with passengers once dinner service began. Given that only the ultra-wealthy and those with noble status were in attendance, the menu was likely to be suitably extravagant, yet once they arrived, they found that Haldor had not elected to appear, perhaps out of caution. This was expected, however, and the two took their planned positions in the central area of the room. It's time. 3's quiet murmur was immediately followed by the din of an explosion from the floor below. The passengers began to panic, but their fear slowly subsided to uneasiness as security personnel deployed and headed to the first floor to investigate the situation. In truth, the explosion had been caused by a small makeshift bomb that 3 and 9 had planted in an unoccupied room. The blast wasn't particularly powerful, but it was enough to ignite a number of small fires in the area. Their goal was to lure out security, and in that regard, the bomb had more than served its purpose. The plan was progressing apace. "Guess I'm up," 9 said in her usual lackadaisical drawl. She gathered up the edges of her skirt in her hands and gently swayed it back and forth, resulting in a number of black spheres. thudding down to the floor. A series of muffled pops reverberated throughout the hall, heralding a cloud of smoke and tear gas that quickly filled the room. What's going on? I can hardly breathe. My eyes are tearing up. The gas wasn't especially strong and would have no lasting effects on its victims. However, it was more than enough to send the already uneasy group of elites into a full-blown panic. 3 and 9 then began the next stage of their plan, their infiltration of the third floor. Currently, the bulk of security was on the first floor, meaning they would have to pass all the way through the second in order to respond to any emergencies at the top of the ship. The large numbers of panicking passengers on the second floor wouldn't stall security for long, but the situation would still buy 3 and 9 all the time they would need. So far, the assassin's plan had gone flawlessly. Still, that didn't mean killing Haldor would be easy once they had reached him. The two hid themselves in a stairwell on the third floor and scouted ahead. 2 more there. From what I can see, it looks like we'll have 5 to deal with. 9 shared her
Sorry.
observations with 3 in a hushed tone. He silently nodded in acknowledgement. One look at the men standing guard ahead was enough to tell they were neither typical passengers nor ship security. They were well armed, and their combat experience was practically carved into their hardened faces. Ex-Jaegers, huh? It was clear they had been hired not to protect the general guests, but to personally attend to Haldor. Given that his room was located in the very back of the ship, it meant that the only way to reach him was through the battle-hardened veterans that currently barred 3 and 9's path. Avoiding a fight simply wasn't in the cards this time. I'll take the lead. As she said this, 9 began to casually walk forward, her posture relaxed. She made no attempt to hide her approach, and even when the guards heard her soft footsteps and turned to look, they didn't register her as a threat, an advantage afforded by her candy-sweet exterior. Little lady, you're not allowed to be up here without permission, one of the guards said in a gravelly voice. Yeah, we know there's been some kind of disturbance downstairs, another chimed in, but this ain't an evacuation site. Get yourself back to your room. Their tone was a bit harsh, but considering they used to be Jaegers, their attitude towards 9 was almost amicable. She gestured towards Haldor's room. But I want to go in there. Pretty please? 9 wasn't putting on the spoiled noble act she had used to sneak aboard the ship earlier in the day. This was probably as close to her genuine, sleepy intonation as she would allow during a mission. You want to meet with Mr. Haldor, do ya? Well, today ain't your lucky day, kid, because we got strict orders to not let anyone into this room. And there's nothing I can do to change your mind? 9 tilted her head as she spoke, her presence beginning to unnerve the guards. No, nothing, one of them finally responded. Oh, I see. That really is too bad. Despite her words, 9 didn't seem especially disappointed by their response. Taking her plush bear in her hand, she suddenly thrust it out in front of her. There was a flash of silver and a loud foot, followed by the thud of 2 of the guards collapsing to the ground. Their necks had each been pierced by 2 needles, which had been tipped in poison, a specialty of 9's and her mainstay in combat.
Oh.
Ordinarily hidden within the bear, the needles could be used to quickly disperse various types of poison through a target's body when thrown at a vital point. 9 would typically carry up to 10 types of poisons, each suitable for a different situation. Depending on the circumstances, she would even use poison-free needles on occasion. This time, 9 had struck the 2 bodyguards with a neurotoxin that robbed the body of its ability to freely move. While not strong enough to kill, it was definitely enough to immobilize someone of substantial size for a good while. What the? Having sensed something amiss, one of the remaining bodyguards down the hallway turned to see what was happening. Out of the corner of his eye, he spotted a figure quickly moving in his direction. Before he could figure out what was happening, however, a blade flashed before his eyes, and he was on the ground, incapacitated along with his comrades. The swift takedown was executed by 3. He wielded a long sword with a thin blade that appeared sharp enough to cut the very air around it. Its construction resembled that of traditional Eastern swords, albeit with a straight blade instead of the typical curved one. Its design was surprisingly ornate, and curiously enough, it seemed to be missing a hilt guard and part of the blade near its base. The 2 remaining bodyguards had seen what had happened and had each already dropped into a fighting stance. No matter how youthful their opponents, it was clear they had no intention of pulling their punches. "You little bastards!" yelled one of them as he began swinging his axe downward. 3 met the attack with his sword, locking the assassin and the bodyguard in place. Seeing an opening, the other bodyguard drew his sword and attempted to stab 3. While still holding the axe in place with his right hand, 3 quickly drew a short sword with his left, using it to deflect the second bodyguard's attack in one clean motion. The short sword resembled the long sword in nearly all aspects but length. Unlike the long sword, it had a hilt guard. However, it seemed incomplete somehow, as though it was missing a piece. It was much less of an offensive weapon than the longsword, being used mainly for defense. Despite his best efforts to fend off the attackers, it seemed as though Threed would quickly be overpowered. Even for him, it was difficult to hold back the weight of an attack from a grown man with only his right hand. Sensing that he needed to do something quickly, Three intentionally stopped pushing back on the axe, deflecting it harmlessly to the side. With his remaining strength, he whipped around to face his staggering assailant and plunged his short sword deep into his torso. The other bodyguard quickly launched a flurry of attacks, but Three pushed the critically wounded axe wielder into his comrade. The sword-wielding bodyguard was momentarily taken off guard, and Three capitalized on the opening, cutting him down with both swords. Right, that should be. Three turned to notify Nine that the guards had all been dispatched, but as he did, he saw the door to the VIP room open behind her. Out stepped another ex-Jaeger, weapon drawn, his sights set on attacking the defenseless Nine while her guard was down. Too much space separated them for Three to warn Nine in time. He pushed off his back heel with all his might, but stopped his dash a split second later, as did the final bodyguard. My, you're pretty sharp. I was wondering how long it'd take you to catch on. Nine turned lazily on her heel and cast a derisive glance over her shoulder. Her expression remained unfazed as thin red stripes appeared over the Jaeger's arms and legs, blood beginning to trickle out like sanguine tears.
Jesus Christ.
You do well to keep still. Wriggle too much and you'll be leaving in far more pieces than you arrived. Her sweet appearance made her remarks all the more disconcerting and ghastly. The ex-Jaeger understood that this was no empty threat. He truly couldn't afford to take another step. The cause of his painful predicament was a web of superfine steel wires surrounding him. Thanks to their special processing, the wires were roughly as sharp as a drawer full of top-end kitchen knives. Nine had laid a trap outside the door, one that an unassuming person would have been hard-pressed to detect with the naked eye. Any unfortunate soul who had tried to pass through the area with any degree of speed would have soon found themselves the centerpiece of a grisly, blood-splattered tableau. The wires were connected to specially designed needles Nine used as her main weapon. Such wire was notoriously difficult to use and was rarely regarded as being sufficiently powerful to use as one's only means of attack. While there were rumors of true masters who needed no other implements to eliminate their targets, Nine had yet to attain quite such level of skill with them. That said, she was still a menace in her own right, and a fiendishly clever master of traps besides, as the ex-Jaeger had just learned. Nine tossed a poisoned needle at her immobilized foe with minimal effort, and her hapless victim collapsed to the floor. She tilted her head to the side as she noticed Three staring at her. "What? Is something wrong, S?" she asked, using the nickname she preferred to call 3 by. She would often refer to herself as N, which 3 took as a shortened version of 9, but when she spoke with 3, she would use S instead of T. He had assumed it to be short for swords, despite the word being part of both of their names, but had never bothered to ask. Nothing at all. 3 tersely responded as he turned to face the VIP room door. At last, the pair stepped into the room housing their target, Haldor Barn. To be continued.
I can see why you wanted me to read this.
I quite like it, but I do think, like, the combat, especially later on, gets a bit long in the tooth. Like, we used a lot of words here to.
We sure did, yeah.
And when it gets to some fight scenes, you can kind of like sort of skim it.
Yeah, I gotcha. Alright. I was gonna say, in the back of my head, in a dream, I will say, in a hazy dream, I think I've seen these two before, S and N. But I don't know. Maybe we'll never see him again. Who knows? Holy shit. Alright, so here's what I'm thinking, because it's just the two of us and there's a lot here. Maybe we should do one half today and maybe one half either tomorrow or Saturday before the session. We can, like, chunk it out.
That sounds good.
Yeah, okay. So I will start with 3. Let me check. 22, 33. Yeah. Just cut it down bit by bit as we go. Alrighty, let's go. Just take a sip.
You get started. I'm gonna go fill up on the water.
Chapter 3, The Assassins and the Target. Inside the room was opulence made manifest. The best of the best. Enough to make the wealthiest noble envious. In the center of its spacious layout sat Haldor Barn, reclined on a sofa. He brought a glass of wine to his lips as his features twisted a wry and unpleasant expression. Absolute incompetence. Such a simple job, yet apparently one completely beyond them. Mr. Barn had fully grasped the situation. He had given the order that no one was allowed in, yet there were now 2 children standing before him. Given the commotion outside, it had been easy to guess what had happened. Though their appearances made it hard to believe, the 2 standing before him were no doubt of professional assassins here for his life. Still, Haldor maintained his composure. He kept this realization hidden, and he didn't allow so much as a hint of panic creep onto his features. The source of his confidence was a certain colossal machine that sat on the floor before him. Its mere presence made even the impossibly spacious room feel cramped. It towered over 2 origins in height, and 6 spider-like legs protruding from its body. Its humanoid upper half stood erect, with 4 menacing arms stretching from it. The entire machine emitted an eerie glow, making for a most intimidating sight to behold. "Wow-wee, that's a big one," Nine remarked, glancing up at it. "An archaism," Dine exclaimed, immediately shifting to a battle stance. "This beauty of is a new favorite of mine, a rather fruitful find at the recent back alley auction I happened to attend. And it wasn't cheap, let me tell you. But no, I didn't stop there. I'm a man who doesn't do things by half measures. I paid a pricey sum to have it outfitted with the most cutting-edge technology available. Mere well spent, in my opinion. I dare say it has enough firepower to easily wipe out an entire platoon of soldiers if it wanted to. In fact, it'd be mere child's play." Barely able to contain his smug grin, Haldor looked like a boastful child showing off his expensive toy at school. "So the bums outside were just bouncers then, and this monstrosity is actually here to protect you?" 3 deduced. "Ooh, a sharp one." "That's precisely correct," Haldor said gleefully. "As long as I have it at my side, my safety here is guaranteed, and once I make it to the Republic, I'll be untouchable." He let out a long laugh, his voice rising higher and higher, echoing endlessly throughout the gaudy chamber. "Shockingly stupid. He really is an idiot, huh? The duo's comments were born of simple overconfidence. Even if they somehow fail in their mission, and even if Haldor somehow managed to make it to Heiue territory, he had already been marked by death by the organization. They would pursue him to the bitter end. To the last man, he had zero chance of survival. Attack! As Haldor's order, the Archaism lurched into action. It set its sights on 3 and charged straight for him. 9 took the opportunity to begin casting her arts while her partner specialized in close quarters combat. She was a force to be reckoned with when it came to orbital arts. As she began to charge, however, one of the Archaism's arms rapidly folded out into a gun. The muzzle pointed at 9's direction. Without delay, it sprayed a hail of bullets at her. Whoa! 9 evaded the gunfire by a hair's breadth, but it was forced to abandon casting his art. Abandon casting her art. The Archaism focused its attention on 3, who was busy fending off the melee attacks with his long sword. 9 sprinted to the other side of the room and started to cast again. The machine's aim was too adept, however, and she found herself unable to escape it long enough to get an art off. It appeared that their foe was equipped with a powerful arts detection sensor, one that allowed it to identify incoming orbital attacks and counterattack before they could be launched. Forced to abandon her casting again, 9 screwed up her face in frustration and sullenly gripped her plush bear. This thing doesn't play nice. I quit, she said in a huff. It was a fair point. Poison tip needles wouldn't have been particularly effective against steel plating of a machine, and without the ability to cast her arts, 9 found herself with a loss. 3, however, remained unperturbed and readied himself for another onslaught. I'm gonna grab a little shut-eye. Wake me when the fighting's over, okay? 9 said as she flopped out on one of the room's sofas, using a bear as a pillow. Oh my god. 9, cut it out! I need you to stay awake! 3 shouted from across the room. Despite this, 9 didn't react at all. As she dozed, the Archaism seemed to disregard her as a threat, and fully focused on her attention on 3. Its forearms transformed into a sword, a lance, an axe, and a gun, and proceeded to launch a relentless string of attacks at the already overwhelmed assassin. 3 leapt out of the way as the machine's sword arm cut and arced through the air, only to then see the lance rocketing towards him. He narrowly avoided it, but his escape path was blocked by the mighty swing of an axe. Meanwhile, the Archaism had its gun trained on Haldor's direction. Even in the heat of combat, it prioritized protecting its master against any approaching threats. Swift movements and deft swordplay were the foundation of 3's combat style, but they were of little use against such a powerful machine. The Archaism was simply too fast, and his attacks were both explosively powerful and aimed with deadly precision. Further, its 6 legs afforded it perfect balance, and its multiple arms allowed it to launch attacks faster than 3 could keep up. To his irritation, 3 found his skill set completely useless against the metal monstrosity. Sure, he was a better fit for the task than 9, but only by a slim margin. Regardless, he continued to fight, both blades flashing as they moved to intercept his foe. The sheer number of attacks coming at him forced 3 to focus entirely on defense. He parried, dodged, and deflected the relentless wave of strikes, biding his time, waiting for the machine to leave an opening for him to strike with his longsword. This violent dance continued for some time. 3 had managed to land a number of blows to the machine's body and arms, but each had resulted in no more than a metallic twang, as his blade was repelled by the solid metal armor. Haha! It's no use, child. That armor was specially commissioned, and your pathetic little butter knives don't have a snowball's chance of Gehenna against them. Haldor's mocking tone grated on 3's nerves. It was made worse by the fact that it was clear he wasn't lying. 3's attacks had been completely ineffective so far. Still, 3 had yet to suffer any wounds. Given how things were going, though, it was only a matter of time until he was slowly worn down. Analysis complete. 9 suddenly began speaking, apparently having woke up from a nap. Still lounging on the sofa, she continued, her voice flatter and more precise than usual. Arms, joint 1, down 5 reg. Legs, joint 2, up 3 reg. Waist, rotation, axis center. Left side of chest. Up, 2 of 5. Left, 1 of 5. The first to respond was not 3, but Haldor. You little wench, how did you do that? He was flustered, clearly shocked that 9 figured out the Archaism's structural weak points. 9 slowly rose from the sofa and reverted back to her usual drawl, sleepily rubbing her eyes as she spoke. I could tell by the sound. It takes concentration, though. Pure disbelief edged onto Haldor's face. 3, on the other hand, looked as composed as ever. He had known from the start what 9 was doing. He was simply buying her time until the analysis was complete. S. Now. Right. 3 readied himself and rushed the Archaism. His swordplay swifter than ever, a veritable tornado of slashes and stabs. Each of his attacks hit one of the weak points that 9 had pointed out. He suddenly switched to his short sword and performed the same volley of attacks, hitting the same point a second time, but the result was the same before. Nothing save the same high-pitched metallic sound that rang out with each hit. It didn't appear that the Archaism had been damaged in the slightest. Haldor was beside himself in laughter, relishing watching the young assassin struggle. What a joke! You can swing those little swords of yours until the palms come home, but you're never going to get through that armor. All part of the process. Letting the simple reply linger in the air, 3 lined up his short sword with the empty section of the base of the long sword. The 2 blades locked into place, becoming a single weapon, their edges sharp, lining up perfectly. Oh my god, he's Cloud Strife!
Oh my god, it's anime.
It's anime, I love it. At first glance, it would be difficult to tell the 2 were ever anything but a single sword. Haldor watched the process with interest, but then burst into mocking laughter a moment later. Ha 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 ha! Proud of your pocket knife, little boy! Do you honestly think that's your ticket to victory? Truth be told, even in its combined state, the reach of 3's weapon hadn't improved any, nor was the weapon sharper or faster. The slightly increased weight of the blade may have provided some increase in power, but certainly not enough to break through the Archaism's thick armor. Given the opponent at hand, the weapon truly seemed little better than a toy. Three chose to remain silent and let his weapon do the talking. He swung at the weak point on the Archaism's leg, the same spot he had targeted before. This time, however, his strike was followed by a large explosion, and the Archaism's leg flew across the room. Oh. The blast seemed to have come from within the Archaism itself, and was powerful enough to have blown its limb completely off, as well as clean off. The blast appeared similar to that of a fire element art, but neither 3 nor 9 had appeared to have cast anything. Even if they had, the Archaism sensor would have surely detected it. What the? Haldor stammered, his face twisted with shock and fear. Another swing by 3's sword, followed by another explosion. A second of the Archaism's limbs was sent flying to a corner of the room. What the hell is going on? Haldor screeched, no longer trying to hide his panic. His tone quickly deteriorated from alarm to abject terror. This is no ordinary sword, 3 began to speak, his face devoid of expression. It's fully integrated with a battle orbit, forming a single weapon. Well, strictly speaking, I suppose it's closer to an ordinary orbit than a battle orbit. As he spoke, he continued his attack, his swordplay not pausing for even a second. An orbit with a single function, a controlled explosion on points I designate. However, its activation requires each blade to have separately made contact with the intended target area. You can think of it as marks, as targeting coordinates essentially. He's such a manga character.
Okay, buddy.
It's like,
The shonen?
yeah, it feels like I'm reading Rave Master. I kind of dig it. Even though 3's initial attacks seemed to have been repelled, they were actually proprietary steps in his process. The subsequent explosions were the true attack. The third strike to the same location, this time made with an united blade. results in the explosion. The location and timing specifications were complicated, as was the use of the specialized orbit in conjunction with some automated processing. The end result was an instantaneous cast time, however. If the wielder was skilled enough, they'd be able to launch powerful arts attacks without the need of any charge-up period. It was in this ability that the true value of Three's weapons lay. But having suffered an enormous amount of damage from the rapid strikes unleashed on it, the Archaismus began throwing sparks in all directions. It began to dawn on Haldor that victory was no longer an option for him, and he began desperately looking for a means to escape. Stop fighting and get me out here now! Thank you. He heard the Archaismus' shrill yell. Reacting to his new orders, the machine quickly rotated its torso and began moving towards him. I don't think so, a lazy voice called from across the room. During the commotion, its remaining spider-like legs had been bound with a complex web of steel wire, rendering it immobile. Korodeo Wariga. 3 quickly struck its remaining weak points in rapid succession. The resulting series of explosions tore the machine to pieces, littering its surroundings with burnt steel and charred components. When the smoke had cleared, the room was so filled with broken parts it was more scrapyard than sweet. What remained of the Archaism's body ceased all functions and collapsed. Its chassis mangled beyond recognition. 3 deftly wove his way through the junk scattered at his feet, silently moving towards Haldor. Stay back! A pitiful squeak escaped Haldor's throat as he scrambled backward, away from the approaching assassin. There was nowhere to run, however. 3's mission was nearing its end, yet he didn't feel happiness or even relief. He took a step closer. He felt his sword suddenly grow heavy in his hand. He was forced to take another step. His legs felt like they were encased in concrete. His whole body felt like it was desperately rejecting his advance, trying to pull itself away. Another step. This was how it always ended. All that remained was for him to fulfill his role. He was nothing but a tool, a machine. This is how it's supposed to be. 3 took one final step forward. There's no need to share any details with you. Still, I figure you at least deserve to know who's ending your life. To know, 3 thought to himself, whose name to curse as you burn the fires of Gehenna. I am 3 of swords. He plunged his blade deep into Haldor's chest, piercing the man's heart. I am an assassin for the organization. Damn.
Well, right.
By this point, the panic on the second floor had largely subsided as the ship's security guards were finally starting to move up to the 3rd floor. Picking up on this, 3 and 9 quickly broke open the window and jumped through the sea to the sea outside. It's a good thing this mission wasn't on an airship. That would have been making escaping even more of a pain, 9 remarked. Agreed. She was right. Escaping from an airship would have necessitated a specialized aircraft for the operation, as well as forcing the 2 to leap from ship to ship midair. It wouldn't have been entirely impossible for the young assassins, though, and surely someone in their wide world had carried out such an operation before. Kevin. Oh, who said that? S. 9 softly called out to 3, again using a preferred nickname for him. He was a corrupt man, an evil man. The 2 of them looked back towards the ship. There was no need for further explanation between the 2. Yeah, I know, 3 said quietly. He had been thorough in reading through the mission dossier and knew that 9 spoke true. Haldor was a bastard through and through, one that performed all kinds of horrible acts in the pursuit of Mira. His mere existence sullied the world, and society was better off with him no longer a part of it. Not that it matters either way. When it came down to it, a hit was a hit. A target could be the person with the purest heart on the continent, or the scummiest bottom feeder imaginable. If an assassination order came from the organization, 3 and 9 followed it. That's how it always was. I guess. 9 went silent. She took something out from her plush bear and began blowing into it. It gradually took shape, the shape of an inflatable raft big enough for one. How big is that bear?
Apparently pretty big. Big enough.
Big enough.
A lot of shit.
9 climbed aboard and flopped down, once again using her bear as a pillow. I'm gonna catch a few winks. I'll leave this part to you, S, okay? This part meant for 3 to swim the boat to shore. Your legs work just fine, he retorted. Do it yourself. Despite his words, 3 felt a twinge of something resembling affection in his heart. He and 9 had been operating together for over a year at this point. One sec. She was a little younger than him, and he sometimes found himself thinking of her more as a little sister than his partner. Their natural rapport aside, she was also someone who could truly rely on. He could truly rely on during their missions. Despite this, 3 understood the situation. He understood that even if 9 was his partner, even if he thought of her as a little sister, he could never let his guard down. He could never truly trust her. He continued.
Oh, dear.
My boy has some trust issues.
And issues with his job, apparently.
Yeah, he doesn't like killing people. Maybe.
I don't like killing, said the assassin.
Maybe this life ain't cut out for him. But hey, at least Halidor was a jackass, so you know.
There you go.
Yeah.
Chapter 4. 3 of Swords. They haunt me relentlessly. All the people I've murdered over the years. I've cut off their heads, carved their hearts from their chests, sliced their torsos right through the middle. But no matter what I do, an army of corpses continue to pursue me. I see them every time I close my eyes. The politicians, the nobles, the merchants, the rich and powerful. Just leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone.
Oh.
I frantically swing my sword at them. I cut and cut, bisecting them, slashing them apart. But they don't relent. Chunks of flesh and bone, viscera and intestines, lungs and brains. They gather into a writhing mass that comes crashing down on me like a gory wave, threatening to swallow me whole. Get away, get away, get away, get away! I try to escape, but they corner me again and again, my victims staring at me with hollow eyes, accusing me. How could you do this to us? How? They throw themselves at me, their decaying fingers gripping my neck, trying to rip the life out of me just as I did to them. Let me go, let me go, let me go, let me go! I frantically thrash and struggle, but no matter what I do, I can't break away. Rotting blood and bile trickles down my body, dissolving my skin. The wave finally swallows me up. I just want a normal life. I just want my humanity back. I woke from my nightmare, my breath short and ragged. My entire body was soaked in a horrible sweat. I fought back the rising urge to vomit. The night after completing a mission was always like this. The only difference was seeing one more face in the crowd. Even after years, my disgust for murder had never abated, not even in the slightest. No matter how much time passed, I couldn't rid myself of the scars left in my mind by the terrible acts I performed. Yet I had no choice but to continue. 9 and I were nothing but tools. Our individual thoughts and ideals had no meaning. They were completely unnecessary. All the organization required from us was a skillful capacity for murder and unquestioning subordination, to kill as we were ordered to. Our entire existence boiled down to this singular point. To reject an order or attempt escape was tantamount to suicide. The organization. To even speak its true name was forbidden. It was a group of professional killers that existed in the shadows of society. Its core business was eliminating marks, but its true objective likely lay elsewhere. As a low-ranking member, I was simply one of the organization's weapons. There was no reason for such info to be shared with me. Most members of the organization had served it since they were children. Children deemed to possess special potential were made to undergo combat instruction and exercises in a place known as the factory. The majority of children who entered the factory would never again see beyond its walls. Unable to endure the merciless training they were put through, it would become their tomb. The lucky ones who did survive, however, were officially recognized as entry-level members of the organization. That's what happened with me. I was forced to abandon who I was when I first passed through the factory's doors at 7 years old. Anyone who dared utter their former name would be subject to severe punishment. There was no concept of individuality. Life in the organization meant being nothing more than another tool in an arsenal to forge Kingdom Hearts. Sorry. It wasn't until I graduated at the age of 10 that I was given a name. It only served to solidify my status as a weapon, however. Our names, more like titles, are based on tarot cards. In my case, the moniker I received was from the minor arcana, Three of Swords. It didn't have even the slightest bit of humanity to it, but it was better than having no name at all.
Damn, brother, you got gypped.
Both the higher-ups and a small fraction of the very best candidates were given a name based on the major arcana. Everyone who survived training and made it in was skilled, but in terms of combat ability, the major arcana could run circles around the rest of us. Rumor had it they were even more powerful than top-ranking rangers.
Holy shit.
I left my room and peeked into the neighboring one. It seemed like Nine was still sleeping. It was time for my report, so I headed out on my own. Lower-level members of the organization generally operated in pairs. My partner is Nine of Swords, a girl 1 year my junior. Nine was a natural genius. She graduated from the factory in a single year, despite the fact that the average kid takes 3 to 5, even if they even make it to graduation without dropping out, that is. From gathering info to analyzing battle situations, acting abilities to infiltration tactics, she was top class in a multitude of fronts. That's to say nothing of her combat style, which made use of needles and wires, allowing her to control the field of battle and dominate her foes. All in all, her abilities were far better suited to assassinations than mine were. It was a bit awkward for us when we were first paired up, but after working together for a year, I could honestly say she was the best partner I'd ever had, and the most reliable. At the same time, she was also the person I needed to regard with the most caution. The reasons why the organization used the partner system were twofold. The obvious reason was that it helped facilitate missions, but it also forced each partner to monitor the other. In the organization, betrayal was swiftly returned with death. A tool is doomed to serve until it breaks. As such, we were expected to be part of the organization the entirety of our lives. As a general rule, we were afforded no freedom. There did, however, exist special rules. If one were to sense that their partner was scheming to betray the organization, they could sell them out to gain their own freedom. All you had to do was make your report, present sufficient evidence of your suspicion, and then you were given the task of eliminating them yourself. If you succeeded, you were free.
Among Us.
Simply. Among Us?
Among
Simply
Us?
running away meant resigning yourself to looking over your shoulder the rest of your life. The organization had eyes everywhere. Anyone who wanted true freedom was better off waiting for the chance to turn their partner in. There was another problem too. The worst of the worst would actually fabricate proof of the partner's betrayal in an effort to earn their own freedom.
That makes sense.
Thus, the person you needed to regard most cautiously was not an enemy you'd face on any mission, but the partner who was always at your side. You needed to entertain and accept the notion that you could be betrayed at any time. Members did not turn their backs on the organization. This was an absolute requirement for survival, and a lesson I learned very early on through personal experience. 3 years ago, I tried to escape. Well, I suppose it was more we than I. At the time, I was partnered with another boy, one known as Ace of Swords.
Ace no Sho.
Ace. Ace was a year my senior, and he was a pretty good guy.
Hmm.
We got along well enough, and he quickly grew into an older brother figure for me. He wielded a giant sword with ease, one as long as he was tall, and he used it both to destroy our enemies and protect me. He really was an ace when it came to battle. In that sense, his name couldn't have been more appropriate. One thing Ace and I shared was contempt for the murders we were forced to perform. I can't remember how the idea of escaping the organization came up initially, but I do recall that neither of us objected to it. As I mentioned, the system was set up to prevent the individual members from betraying the organization, as they could be sold out by their partner. We figured the best way around that was to simply work together and escape the organization as a team. With our objective decided on, we began planning in earnest. We quickly decided we'd need to execute our plan as far away from other pairs of assassins employed by the organization. The first part of our plan went well enough. We entered Erebonia, thinking that its considerable distance from our normal area of operations meant we could enjoy a certain degree of safety. That was a severe misjudgment on our part, though. The organization had eyes there as well. We were approached by other pairs of assassins twice, and both times ended with combat. We managed to fend them off, however. Ace and I were partners for a reason, and we fought well together. The third time, however, it was the Overseer that paid us a visit. To say that his power was overwhelming wouldn't do it justice. It was like trying to fight a force of nature.
The Overseer.
The Overseer.
Hmm.
We barely managed to escape with our lives, suffering heavy wounds in the process. With nowhere else to go, we huddled together in a cave, conscious of the fact that our next encounter with the Overseer would surely be our last. There was nothing more to be said about the situation, and for what felt like an eternity, we passed the time in silence. Hey, Ace, I began speaking, believing that it would be the last conversation we'd ever have. What's up, buddy? I just want to say, all things considered, I think everything could have went a lot worse. What's that supposed to mean? He struggled through the pain to force out a little smirk at my comment. Don't get me wrong, I have plenty of regrets, but still. Ace waited in silence for me to continue. Being by your side all this time, well, it's made my life so much better, Ace. And even if we're fated to meet our deaths here, it's a million times better than spending a lifetime as just another tool. The fire flickered. Our shadows danced on the cave wall. Finally, Ace broke the silence, his voice a mere whisper. 3. Thanks for everything, man. You too, Ace. Thank you. I had said what I needed to say. I felt that if our opponent were to arrive at that very moment, I'd at least be able to give my whole soul to the battle. But then, if that's how you feel, Ace started. Suddenly, the ambience in the cave completely shifted, like some horrible hallucination. Ace's icy voice pierced through me, chilling me to the bone. Then die, buddy. Die for me. My first reaction was slight confusion. I actually interpreted it as a clumsy way of saying we would face our deaths together. I turned to face him just to clarify, and what I saw next was Ace's massive sword speeding down toward my head. I immediately dodged his strike, and the ground where I had been laying only a moment ago had been shattered into rubble. "Ace, what are you doing?" I cried out. "You can't figure it out on your own. Have you forgotten the final rule for those who betray the organization?" The final rule. I hadn't forgotten it. I simply hadn't given it much thought. It seemed irrelevant to our situation, but everything clicked into place then. When two partners betray the organization, the only way for one of them to gain its forgiveness was to kill their partner and present the organization with a corpse. The idea behind this rule was to force escapees into a sense of desperation and then push them into killing each other, taking care of the problem so the organization didn't have to. To my absolute shock, this was precisely what Ace was trying to do. I understood what was happening, but all I could do was ask why over and over. "Ace, why? Why are you doing this?" "You know, buddy, becoming partners with you was the only bit of luck I've had in my whole goddess damned life. I really did want to be free together, to get our humanity back together." "Then why are you—" "Because I need to survive," he said, his voice dripping with desperation. "I can't die like this." Screaming wildly, Ace swung his sword at me again. The same sword that had been used to save my life more times than I could count was now being used in an attempt to end it. "Just die!" he screamed. I tried to scream back, but the horrible knot in my stomach and the storm of emotions in my heart ensured that the only thing that came out of my mouth was a meaningless warble as I met his sword with my own. Engulfed in despair, I surrendered control to my instincts and engaged this enemy in combat as I would any other. I don't clearly remember what happened from there. All I know is that I was overtaken by rage and sadness and became a slashing, screaming monster. I was finally brought to my senses by the sound of Ace's body collapsing to the ground. That's how I managed to survive, how I won back my position as one of the organization's tools, and that's where I'd been ever since. Our escape was a deadly failure that laid bare my inadequacies. I still hadn't given up on winning back my humanity, but I'd be damned if I was going to trust anyone else ever again. To be continued.
Holy shit.
Oh man,
Damn.
poor guy.
You seen this shit, Acid?
I mean, I've seen this shit before, but yes.
Well, welcome to it. Yeah.
We'll be
Yeah.
reading the
Yeah.
next chapter, and then we'll be.
Yeah.
Oh god, well, we're not even halfway done?
I know, right? It was chunkier than I expected. Hey, Acid, you want to contribute?
You wanna read? We've been switching chapters, Ron and I.
Yeah. You don't have to if you don't
I
want
feel
to.
like, I don't know, do you feel like I would ruin this?
Alright, give me a sec then.
This is 33 pages. You know we could take half the pages each.
Yeah, we could. Yeah.
I mean, maybe.
Not necessarily you. I was talking Ron and I, but I mean.
Yeah. Okay.
Fuck it, I'll throw my hand in, because, I am
Okay.
mentally exhausted anyway from what the fuck I just did anyway.
Okay, well, you can read half, so like
Well,
up to like 17, and then swap off.
Well, halfway into 17. I'm sure there's like a good paragraph for this, maybe.
Yeah.
Chapter 5, The Overseer and the Report.
Ooh.
The town was practically empty, and the first rays of dawn were only just beginning to pierce the dark sky above. Stepping out of the inn, 3 inhaled deeply, filling his lung with the chilly air in an effort to dispel his drowsiness. The town, known as Lucent, was located on the border of Calvard and Rebefaria. 3 and 9 would often undertake missions in both countries, making the centrally located town a perfect base of operations. East of the town was an official border crossing into Calvard. In stark contrast, westward lay a mountain road known only to a select few. It was a treacherous path, to be sure, but also one that facilitated entry into the Republic without the need to go through the official channels. 3 headed to the designated rendezvous point, a small hill surrounded by weathered boulders. The site was deep in the mountains and therefore free of unwanted eyes. There, he found a black silhouette waiting for him. It was a man hidden in shadows, wrapped in a tattered black cloak that obscured his face and body both. Despite his bedraggled attire, his presence had an insurmountable weight to it, instilling a primal sort of fear into any who laid eyes on him. "I'm here to make my report," said Tree. 3. It's a tree, whatever.
3.
In response, the cloaked figure uttered only a single word: "Speak." This man, known as the Overseer, was one of the higher-ranking members of the organization. He was given the name of Emperor from the Major Arcana, but those who served under him referred to him simply as the Overseer. As his title suggested, he watched over 3 and the rest of the organization's tools. He was the one who provided mission instructions and received the reports. He relayed the details of the Haldor mission to the Overseer. As he finished, the man spoke again. Next. Right, regarding 9 of Swords. As part of the debriefing, every member was required to report on the partner's activities. Each of the pair would separately describe what they did and what they observed their partner doing. Even the slightest discrepancy between the pair's reports was regarded with suspicion. The objective behind this requirement was to instill them with fear that any plot they may hatch to betray the organization would swiftly make its way into the ears of the superiors. "That is all," Frey said as he finished his report. "Very well," the Overseer said. "You'll be contacted with instructions for your next mission once they are ready." "Understood." Frey turned to head back to town, but as he did, the Overseer spoke again. It was little more than a whisper, but it was delivered with a weight that froze 3 in his tracks. "Stop." 3 slowly turned around to face the Overseer. As always, his dark hood completely covered his face. "It's been 3 years now. You haven't been making any more plans, have you?"
Ooh.
3 felt a sudden chill shoot down his spine. The Overseer's suffocating gaze was laced with a powerful malice. There was no need for 3 to ask for clarifications. He knew the Overseer was talking about his escape attempt 3 years prior. The Emperor had personally conducted many of the organization's purge of runaway members. As their very lives become threatened, the lower-ranked members would find themselves overwhelmed by fear, rendering them powerless before the merciless Emperor. Thus, even within the organization, a cruel place in its own right, the Emperor had earned himself a reputation for his savagery. He was also the very same man who had tracked down 3 and Ace during their escape attempt. Had he picked up on 3's new plan to escape? No. 3 found the thought absurd. He had taken every step with the utmost care and prudence. Further, if the Emperor had obtained some proof of 3's wrongdoing, the young assassin would already be dead. This was a test. If 3 wavered here, even in the slightest, it would mean his end. "I will never again attempt something so foolish. I am a tool of the organization, nothing more. My sole purpose is to take the lives of my target." The way he cast his eyes, his calculated and practiced manner of speech, his natural briefing patterns, 3 had pulled it off to perfection. Silence hung heavy in the air between them for a moment. Finally, the Emperor spoke. "I do hope that is the case." The murderous presence faded from the air as the detention had been building in 3's chest. "There are certain expectations riding on your shoulders," the Emperor said. "I will fully devote myself to meeting them," 3 said in the same practiced tone. He moved once more to return to town and was not stopped this time.
Daddy Emperor is watching.
He bought it. Back at his inn room, 3 let out a sigh of relief as he collapsed into his bed. Nothing had really happened during his exchange with the Overseer, but nonetheless, he felt completely drained. Without exception, each interaction he had with the Overseer was psychologically exhausting. This was to be expected, however, as he was, indeed, hiding his true intention from the organization. In truth, 3 had been planning a second escape attempt. The past 3 years had been grueling, but it did nothing to quash his fervent desire for freedom. If anything, his resolve to reclaim his humanity only grown stronger by the day. However, each day also saw his blood-drenched hands growing yet heavier with sin. He was the mere tool, human in physical form only. But few shreds of humanity still remained at his heart. He feared would be forever lost before much longer. Each new day that dawned could be the day that he finally slipped away to being little more than a device, one whose only function was assassination. But simply, a cold-hearted monster. That was the terrifying future he dreaded above all else. I absolutely need to succeed this time. I need to get out. His plan had 2 requirements he absolutely needed to meet in order to succeed. First off, he needed to avoid a direct confrontation with the Overseer. Second, Nine could not find out about this plan, regardless of the partnership. He had to be careful to avoid even giving the impression that he longed for freedom. Of course, this meant that 3 would be forced to abandon Nine. Someone would fight at his side through countless life or death situations. The girl was even younger than he was, but for all her genius, there seemed to be something off about her. Nonetheless, whatever 3 thought about the moment he would pull the trigger and finally put his plan in motion, he always felt a strange sensation welling up inside of him. Strangely enough, it was a desperate urge to fill her in. There were a number of times where 3 had tried, actually. Before he could even get the first word out, however, memories of Ace's sword speeding down towards him would flash through his mind. In the end, he always remained silent. I can't think this anymore! I can't let my scars define me! I know what I have to do. There's no other way. 3 shook off the thoughts plaguing him and returned his focus to preparing for his escape. The only person I can trust is myself. The rest of the day went by quickly, and before long, dusk began to settle on the town. The day saw 3's diligence pay off at last. His final preparations had gone as smoothly as he could have hoped for. The time had finally arrived. He would set his plan into motion that night. Once Nine fell asleep, he would leave town via the mountain road. Once in Calvard, he would be traveling by car, and he had already arranged for a rental to take him up north to a certain city. Once he arrived, he promptly set off for Liberl via one of the international airport routes that regularly departed from the city. Yet to decide what to do after that point. He could stay a night or 2 in Liberl, or perhaps head over to Le Mans. In any case, he needed to get as far away from his current location as possible. He may have been in the lowest rung of the organization and had little idea what went on among his upper echelon, but he was determined to show them all that he was capable of casting off the shackles that bound him with. Gah! Gah! His rising determination was interrupted by a crow flying into the room. He made a few circles in the air before landing on the table.
Crow armbrust?
Crow armbrust?
Taking a closer look at the bird, 3 noticed a specific crest adorning one of its legs. As he did, his face twisted into a grimace. It could only mean one thing. This was the method the Overseer used to communicate. Now? He wants to meet now? It hadn't been an entire day since Torre had delivered his report. The briefing for the next mission, maybe? Even as he said his words, he was gripped by an indescribable sense of dread and anxiety. However, but he wanted to simply ignore the summons. It was not a luxury he could afford. The only chance his plan had of succeeding was if he was able to put a good amount of distance between himself and his would-be pursuers before the Overseer realized what had happened. Were 3 to ignore direct order, however, the organization would immediately recognize it as an act of rebellion, one that would inevitably lead to his death. Mentally preparing himself for another encounter, one he could not avoid, 3 set out for the meeting location. The rendezvous point was the foot of a small hill deep within the mountains, the same side he had just been that morning. There remained no trace of the ominous, eerie stillness that pervaded the place before, however. Bathed by the light of the setting sun, the wetted boulders seem wreathed in brilliant flame from the distance.
Okay, I'll take it from here. Three arrived to find two figures already waiting for him. The first was the overseer, draped in the same tattered robe as usual. The thought occurred to Three that it made the man look more like the part of a hermit arcana than it did the emperor. At the man's side stood a young girl carrying a large stuffed bear. 9. Her attire was more or less the same as what she wore on the Haldor mission, with a few alterations to make it more functional and mobile. Her presence there did not cause any alarm for Three. After all, if they had been called to be briefed by them on their next mission, it was only natural that she be summoned as well. Something felt different, however. Three couldn't put his finger on why, but anxiety began gripping his chest. "So you have arrived," the overseer said as Three approached. "Yes, what is my task?" And the initial exchange was the same as always. What happened afterward, however, was decidedly not. "Make your appeal." "My appeal?" Three said slowly, the anxiety in his chest rising. "I have received a report detailing your treachery from 9 of Swords." "I don't..." Three stammered. He was at an utter loss for words. He had calculated each and every outcome that could potentially happen, going over the steps in his head time and again. And the absolute worst one possible was now playing right before his very eyes. A wave of despair washed over him. Could this really be happening again? Had 9 betrayed him just like Ace? It wasn't possible, Three thought. He hadn't told her a thing. He knew that their relationship was strictly professional, and that he could not, under any circumstances, trust her. That was just how partnerships in the organization worked. How could she have known? It didn't make any sense. "There's been some kind of mistake." Three attempted to defend himself, knowing full well it was a futile endeavor. "You can't sweet-talk yourself out of this one, Ness." "No, 3 of Swords." 9 finally spoke. Her usual sleepy demeanor was nowhere to be found. Instead, her voice was crisp, her eyes alert. She removed a scrap of paper from her dare and showed it to 3. "This is your ticket for an airship voyage to Liberl, the one you booked for afternoon tomorrow." 3 felt the ground fall out from under him. Amidst the shock, a small part of him wanted to yell out that ticket was fake, but that he had the real ticket. But to do so would be tantamount to suicide. 9 continued speaking, as though directly responding to 3's unspoken questions. "The ticket you have in your possession is counterfeit. I swapped it for the genuine one when you weren't paying attention." Fresh from completing a mission that utilized this very same forgery, 3 now found himself the victim of that exact same trick. "By the way, the name you used to acquire this ticket was Ryan Spoghurt, student of Genisrel Academy, correct?" 9 nodded. That's the same name you used on your false ID of one of our missions last year. That would mean you've been planning to use it for quite some time, wouldn't it?" One sec. Okay. Despite the immediate threat to his life, 3 couldn't help but admire 9's genius, strangely though, enough. 3 decided he wouldn't even try to come up with an excuse. 9 had clearly seen through his plan. She'd seen right into his mind, really. There was just one part he didn't understand. Even if it was her duty to sell him out like this, even if she was a genius, he had been so cautious and prudent in every step of his plan, yet it had all been laid bare, seemingly without a trace or effort. How the hell had this happened? I take that expression to mean that you're trying to puzzle out just how your entire plan was exposed, 9 said, a slight smile playing at the corners of her lips. It was clear to 3 that she was toying with him now, mocking him. "You do realize I've been watching you the entire time we've been partners, right? You've been my only target right from day one." Her tone was merciless, her words dripping with the thinly veiled venom. Yes, I've been watching you three, inspecting, observing. The only real challenge was remaining patient, as I waited for you to slip up and finally show your true colors. It's been that way since the moment I became your partner. 3 struggled to wrap his mind around what 9 was saying. The fact is, you did attempt to betray the organization, but even if you hadn't, I would have falsified whatever I needed to ensure your demise. She continued to speak, leaving nothing unsaid. Despite the overseer's presence, with each word, 3 felt more and more baffled. He could understand her observing him to the degree that her job required, but where was this malicious hatred of hers coming from? She had felt this way from the start? Why? The overseer, who had been silent for some time, let out a low, derisive laugh. I take it you still haven't figured it out? Who she is, I mean. 3 could not for the life of him figure out what this was supposed to mean. He looked at 9, searching for some sort of clue. All he was met was, however, was a glass of pure hatred, one that made him shudder in fear. He had never seen her look that way before. Do you remember Ace of Swords, your former partner? She began, before her voice gained a measured, deadly weight to it. The one you murdered? He was my brother. Dun dun dun!
Oh my god.
3's world began spinning. He started to feel violently ill. His senses dulled. His mind went blank. It became hard to breathe, as though he was being pulled to the bottom of the sea. Under the sea. The air crushed out of his lungs by its unrelenting pressure. Now, after all this time, I can finally avenge his murder. 3 barely felt 9's words, as his head swam with thoughts. Ace was 9's brother? She had known everything from the start? She had been biding her time, hiding her true intentions from the start. Always keeping a watchful eye for a suitable opportunity to arise. An opportunity to claim her vengeance. 3 stood there dumbfounded, as though he lost the ability to speak entirely. I see. No need for you to sputter through an excuse, the overseer said, reading the shot clearly written across 3's face. We have all the facts we need. You will be purged from the organization as per our rules. Your partner, 9 of Swords, will now end your life. Hearing the overseer's words, 9 stepped forward. If you wish for assistance in this task, he said, turning to her, you will not be penalized. The reward will remain the same. The only condition is that you must be the one to deliver the final blow. Once you have eliminated him, your obligations will be cleared. Though I admit the idea of losing such a talent pains me. The reward, the right to one's freedom, gained by uncovering and then executing the partner who had betrayed the organization. The yearning for this freedom had dominated 3's existence for years, and now 9 would be the one to gain it, in exchange for his life. Allow me the honor of doing it alone, she responded. I will avenge my brother's death with my own hands. She took another step forward, producing a number of poison needles from inside her bear. Without a moment's hesitation, she launched them at 3. He instinctively drew his swords and batted the needles out of the air. The combat tactics that had been drilled into him dictated he close the distance between them, yet he didn't take so much as a single step. His parry was purely reflexive, programmed to his mind through years of combat. He had no intention of truly fighting back. Perhaps it was partially because he didn't want to hurt her. More than anything, however, it was because he knew there was no point in resisting. Even if he did manage to best 9, he would need to take on the Emperor afterward. And he knew that was a battle he had no chance of winning. 3 simply accepted his fate to die then and there. There was nothing he could do to change it. 9 pulled out roughly twice the amount of needles as before, and launched them at her former partner. In response, he automatically drew his short sword, and used both blades to swiftly deflect them. In Three's mind, the thought slowly began to sink in. This is his retribution for killing Ace. 9 leapt at him, closing the distance, and began attacking with a greater intensity. Someone like me, 3 thought, someone who slaughters a friend to preserve his own life, doesn't deserve freedom. Someone like me doesn't even deserve to live. 9 continued her assault, attacking with both her needles and wires. Were this an ordinary situation, there was no chance she would be a match for 3 in close quarter combat. However, his heart was not in battle, causing a significant shift in balance in power in the fight. Eventually, 9 managed to decisively gain the upper hand, successfully lopping a wire around 3's neck. I'll die for her vengeance, he thought. Maybe that's the only outcome that makes sense. Maybe that's the end I deserve. 9 deftly moved her fingers, and the steel collar tightened around 3's neck. This is the end, she said in a flat, rigid tone. 3 knew what would happen next. He closed his eyes, choosing to await his end in silence. But the cold embrace of death did not come. To be continued. Man, what a play.
Miss?
Did she miss? Wow, that's
Did
quite.
not have hit 2 on?
Did he survive on 1 HP? Well, we'll find. Did he died? Yeah. Did he have a doll equipped? Either way, either way, we'll find out next time. That's a hell of a cliffhanger to leave off on, if you ask me.
So wait, when are you gonna finish this then?
We're gonna pick up again back tomorrow, or Saturday. Before the session.
This was what, an hour and a half?
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping we can pick back up again tomorrow, same time. But
You might want to do tomorrow.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, Reen wants to do it tomorrow, so we'll do it tomorrow.
Okay.
Anyway, see you guys later. Thank you. Goodbye.
I've got a date with